Well, praise the Lord, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you may be watching this broadcast. We are excited that you have tuned in to another edition of, here it is, drum roll, please. Brrr. That was a little late. Surviving the Holidays. It's your boy, Pastor Corey Allen Duncan Sr. I am here with my PIGs, my partners in grief. I got Ray, the grief coach extraordinaire. I have marriage, family, license therapy, Ashlyn Douthit, and Reverend Dr. Marcus Fisher, who is with us on today. And we are excited. Look, we hope that you have been blessed throughout this journey of December. We told you every single day we will bring you tools, tips, techniques, and takeaways that will help you to survive the holidays. And we hope, we pray that in some way, that this has been practical, portable, and applicable, that it has helped you to navigate through this holiday season. It has been a thrill and a blessing to us. We hope it has been a blessing to you. Today, we are going to talk about, here it is, look for the silver lining. Look for the silver lining. Today's tool, tip, technique, takeaway. It's at the bottom. Look for the silver silver bells. Come on. Right. You go kick us off today. Tell us about looking for the silver lining since you're shaking your head. Tell us about looking for the silver lining
Wait,
and
you
how
said
that can help somebody.
I could kick you off the. Is that what you said? I could
Yeah, I
kick
mean,
you
you
off?
know, you do do what you gotta do.
That
You know
might
what
be a
I'm saying?
silver
Do what you
lining.
gotta do.
Look for the silver lining. We know that grief can feel heavy. It can feel burdensome. You can find yourself in a space where it looks like there is no positive to it, like there is no good thing to look forward to. But the fact that you know that your loved one was known by you, the fact that your loved one was and still is loved by you, the fact that you have some beauty that you can remember, that is the silver lining. And for we who are in Christ, we know that we will, in some way, shape, or form, see our loved ones again. And so that in itself is a silver lining. And sometimes we don't want to wait for that great by and by, right? We don't want to necessarily understand it better by and by. We want to find something and be able to grasp something in the here and now. And so I think that that's just about being intentional, about thinking of those things that brought you joy, thinking of those things that brought you happiness when it comes to your loved one, the things that you were able to do with them, even if you have to think about the things that you were not able to do. And in the moment, you might have been like, yeah, no, why didn't this happen? And then in hindsight, you can see that it worked out for your good anyhow. And so for me, I look at that as the possibility to see the silver lining.
That is awesome. And I'm so sorry. I just threw you in the frying pan with that Crisco grease that Reverend Fisher was talking about before we got on.
You
I
did.
know but you're so smart. You got so much wisdom. You was able to just jump in. But I guess I did the audience a disservice, not even defining. And you answered so eloquently. You answered so eloquently. Got tongue tied. I know he's all right. Silver lining. And you did. You did. You answer so eloquently, but to let them know that a silver lining is a metaphor that looks at the optimism in the midst of the obstacle. That whenever there's something negative that has happened, something quote unquote bad that has happened, there's always a silver lining, or there's always a positive aspect to a negative situation. And so, thank you so very much for answering that so eloquently. But just in case anybody does not know or anybody's not familiar with that term, silver lining, I wanted to lay that foundation for them. Ashlyn, talk to us, Dr. Douthit. Look for the silver lining. How can you help people to navigate through this season by looking for the silver lining?
Mhm. Yeah, I think I've mentioned this before, but just a reminder of how instrumental and how powerful our thoughts can be in general, and having to recognize that no matter the situation, everything isn't all bad and everything isn't all good. And being able to be aware of some of those maybe unhelpful thinking patterns that we might fall into, like that all or nothing thinking of like, everything is great or everything is completely terrible. Just knowing that that's not how life works. We don't live on extremes. We typically fall somewhere in the middle. And having to be able to even identify, like, even if there is maybe something I'm struggling with right now, what can I look at that maybe is a positive, something that is going well? How can I still identify and celebrate those things, even in the midst of challenges? So just kind of having that realistic, balanced view can be helpful of trying to find the silver lining. And finding the silver lining is different than toxic positivity. So there are differences in those things. You can acknowledge the good without making it seem as if everything is good when it's not.
I'm so glad you said that because that was going to be one of the topics. And I actually had that down. So the fact that you was able to weave it in together, oh, that's absolutely awesome. Can you speak a little bit about the toxic positivity? Because I mean, it was real good, the description, all of that type stuff, and just a little bit more even about the difference.
With toxic positivity, it's essentially trying to push down those so-called negative emotions like sadness, anger, frustration, confusion, and trying to stifle them and not expressing them in the name of trying to find the bright side of things. So there has to be a balance of being able to acknowledge those feelings and not trying to push them down and putting on this face like, I'm happy, everything's great, life is wonderful, bad things never happen, I'm never sad. That's different than finding the silver lining. Silver lining is being able to say, hey, I'm going through something, this is a challenge, and there's still some positive things happening. So I can say, I had a hard day at work today. I was late getting there. I was frustrated by something that happened, but I had a great conversation with a friend when I got off work. I was able to go home and relax and put on my favorite movie and enjoy that. But there can still be positives in the day, even if there were some things that happened that maybe weren't so positive. So that is the defining characteristics of like the silver lining versus the toxic positivity. Toxic positivity, you don't acknowledge anything that's not happy, positive, joyful emotions. Whereas the silver lining, you're able to look at both and say these two things can coexist. It doesn't have to be an either or.
That's good. That's good. Thank you for sharing. Reverend Fisher, talk to us.
Yeah. So for me, just experiencing, great loss is, for me, debatably one of the most challenging, or I should say, difficult situations for anybody. And, to understand it and to overcome it, I mean, it's a challenge. And so, in order to grow after a terrible loss, you've got to tap into emotions that are positive. It's critical. You've got to find another means. You've got to find, as we're talking about this, that silver lining, that connectivity of those emotions that are going to call you differently than just staying, if you will, in that state of just negativity, and whatever that may be. And I can say this, that what my connectivity may be could look different than that connectivity that could draw then that of my wife or that of my son, as we talk about the status of my daughter having passed away. But that's critical for us all to then have and to be respectful of what that might look like. But you got to find the positive, because it's so easy when you experience great loss to just stay in the loss, but to find what those emotions are. Many times when I speak about what I call the silver lining for me is to know that my daughter isn't suffering anymore. When I go back and think about the last days of her life, for some, they struggle with just those words, not to struggle any longer. Um, and for them, that's them. But for me, the silver lining, to know that she's at peace, for me is a silver lining. To remember then, though, as I used to sing a song called The Presence of the Lord is Here, and to see the joy and the inspiration that still gives me chills to this day, one, to hear the song, but to remember the reactions that she would have when I would sing the song, that's a silver lining for me. There are so many memories, and I thank God for the memories that she was able to provide for us during the time in which she was here, that He granted her to us, that are our silver linings. You got to connect those, you got to tap into them. And I thank God for having, as big as I am, the ability to tap dance all over that, for the life that she lived with us. So, yeah, it was great.
Come on, Sammy Davis Fisher. You better tap dance all over it. You better tap dance all over it. Ray and Ashlyn, and I want to go first, but do y'all have any silver linings from any negative experience that you had in your life? I was going to ask that question. Reverend Fisher shared his. I know for me, even with my pops, I was feeling some type of way, and I was being true to my feelings. No negative, no toxic positivity. I was being true to my feelings, but I remember a young boy passed away. No, that was a different situation. That Me working in the school systems all my life, I'm studying, I'm researching, I'm seeing that like 87% of children are growing up in single parent homes. And the fact that at 33 I lost my father, the silver lining for me was the fact that I had a father for 33 years when a lot of people didn't have the experience of having one at all. So I had one to help me to navigate through elementary and junior high and high school. And I began to reflect back on the instances, the conversations, the talk, all of these things that we had. And while, I was definitely sad at his passing, no toxic positivity. I felt all of that emotion, but the silver lining was then reflecting upon the experiences and the opportunities that I had. Also, I'll never forget, I was how can I say it? Um, I was at a job that terminated my position. I'll just say that. I was at a job that terminated my position. And although things were not right, I do remember sitting down and I wrote out my 10 most memorable moments at this place, right? There were some significant events that took place, at that particular place. And I sat down and I was intentional about writing out what were the milestones, what were the monumental moments, what were the things that God did in the midst of that place during that season. And for me, even in the midst of a bad situation, those were
Yes.
the silver linings that I was able to hang on to, that I was able to hold near and dear, in my heart in the midst of what was taking place right then. So Reverend Fisher shared his. I don't know if y'all have any. Ray or Ashton, do y'all have any specific silver linings that y'all want to share?
I can. I had a teacher it's actually my second grade teacher that ended up passing away from cancer. I think when I was in graduate school, and it was so like impactful to me to actually be at the funeral and then seeing like how many people actually showed up, and like how her presence kind of just like touched so many different people, like as far as her being a teacher, her being a mentor, from people she went to college with. I mean, her own teachers that she had that came, to show up. And for me, it was so powerful just kind of seeing like the impact one person can have. So the silver lining for me in that moment was, one, having the opportunity to even be able to interact with her, having such like a positive experience with the teacher, because I know that's not everybody's experience, and to have somebody that was a mentor and a role model and continued to keep in contact with me even after I was no longer in her class. And then it just made me even think about how I can be intentional in my own work of, every kid is looking for that one like meaningful person, and having that one person can make all the difference in somebody's life. So for me, it was a reminder of, I need to make sure that I'm intentional with everything that I do, and how I'm choosing to interact with people. So that's one of the things that I try to remind myself of in moments, especially in terms of the work that I do, working with different families and children, and just kind of thinking about, what if my interaction with them could be that one that has them go left or right, and could change the trajectory of their life. So me just trying to make sure I'm being intentional and mindful about the impact that I can have on people, and that I do my best to make sure that it's a positive impact, if at all possible.
Wow. You know what? That's so phenomenal. I tell people all the time that I always want people to have a Corey story that
Mm.
whenever I transition, I want people kind of in that fashion to be able to just look back and say, well, this is how he impacted my life, or I remember he did this. And what's so small to you can be so significant to other people. I
Mhm.
remember Reverend Fisher saying we grew up at our home church back in the day, and one of the mothers, I forgot who it was, but when Reverend Fisher would come home from school, she would always put $5 in his hand or something like that. I mean, $5, but it's impact. It's how
Mhm.
this particular person impacted my life, how they influenced my life, a deed that they sown, that they did, that they completed within me, man, and you remember it, and it helps to shape who you are and how you navigate and how you move forward. So that's powerful. Good deal. You got any silver linings, Ray?
Nah, I ain't got no silver linings. No, I'm just playing. I actually have a couple. So just to piggyback off of what you were saying, Ashley, that the that I am a grief coach is a silver lining for me. That I am able to take the experiences of grief, the experiences that I have had with grief, the experiences that I am having with grief, and I am able to help people navigate their experiences. It really, really is a joy for me to be able to help people in what can look and feel like such a deep and dark place, to be able to see them, to be able to see how they grow, to be able to hear them say, I don't cry, you know what I mean, I push this down, like the whole toxic positivity thing, and then to go through those weeks with them, and by the end they're like, hey, I allowed myself to cry today, I journaled today, this happened and I was able to navigate through. So that's one thing, or one silver lining. Another just is kind of related to what you said about the lady giving Dr. Fisher money. So one of the members that I pastored when I was at my first church, Northwood Christian Church, we had an 8:30 service, and her name was Iona Locke. She was a beautiful, beautiful lady. She was a little petite lady, but she was so sweet. And one Sunday after church, she walked up to me and my co-pastor, and you know how the elders will hand you that balled fist, and she shook my hand, and it was saying, I was like, oh, okay, thank you. And so I didn't look at it until afterwards, and I think it might have been like $10 or $20 or something. I said, oh, that was really sweet. Well, at her celebration of life service, I mentioned it, because I just thought that it was a very sweet thing, and it reminded me of my own grandmother who had passed as well. And so at the end of the service is over with. There were some people who were walking out, and so this guy walked out, and then I saw him go back in, but there were not a whole lot of people in there. So I'm thinking, I'm the pastor of the church, I'm like, is everything okay? There were about there were about 10 or 15 people who walked past me one by one, shook my hand with money in it,
Oh,
saying,
wow.
God
Mm.
bless you, you know,
Wow.
and and I'm the type of person where my reaction sometimes is going to be laughter, not because I think it's funny, but it's like my knee-jerk reaction to it. And I was just in it was so sweet and shocking at the same time. And I'm like, what is going? And it took me like the third or fourth person before I really realized what was going on. And so that was a silver lining for me. And I think that's something that I'll always remember about her.
Man, beautiful. It's beautiful. So we're not talking about toxic positivity. We're talking about looking for the silver lining, for that positive that positive aspect to the situation in the midst of a negative occurrence. So that's your tool, your tip, your technique, your takeaway for the day. Y'all look for the silver lining. Look, we love y'all with the love of the Lord. And as we always say, small steps, they always lead to great distances. Now, let's go.